The NCAA allows players to raise money for COVID-19 relief. AP announced their Players and Coaches of the Year. MLB and MLPA have come to an agreement, and MLB and Fanatics team up.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner. So we are going to start with the Olympics. We named all those things, and we're not even starting with any of them. We're starting with the Olympics.
Correct.
So the Olympics has postponed the events, the games, until at least 2021. Tanner, what are you thinking?
So to go with this, that this is not the first time that the Olympics have been tampered with. This is the first time though since 1940, 1944 that those were canceled, and that was due to World War II. But this is the first time that they've been postponed. So obviously the reasoning for it is because of COVID-19, along with many other sporting events. But I know this was really up in the air in terms of if they were going to continue with it, depending on the sport too, because there are some that they're trying to keep that social distancing. But I think it's the best move. It's really looking far ahead, and because we don't know how long this COVID-19, this pandemic is going to last. But I think just for the safe side, both in Tokyo and just for the world, I think it's the best move to do. But again, obviously, certain athletes will feel different. I know Canada actually said even if they went through with it, they were officially out of the Olympics because they didn't want to take any chances. So I think in the best interest for everybody, it was the best move.
Yeah, I think it's huge. It's a huge thing that they're just canceling the games, or not canceling, postponing. Sorry, postponing
All
the
good.
games. That's insane. That's really insane, to be quite honest, that they're just not having them.
Well, and I think the main reason is just you think of certain events like the Olympics and you think, oh, there's no way that's going to change or that anything could ever cause that to change. Again, obviously with the other exceptions, but it's just, again, the biggest thing is it's postponed. It's not like we're going to completely get rid of it. That's important. It also makes you wonder, because since this is the first time it's postponed, will the once every 4 years change, or do you think then it'll just lose a year essentially for training and everything? That's a question that I was wondering when this happened.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. What does that mean for the Olympics in 2024 and 2028 and 2032? There you go, math.
Nice, that was good.
But yeah, what does that mean for the Olympics moving on? Yeah, did they just revert back? Like that's the main question I have that I haven't seen answered. Maybe we need to ask the question.
Yeah, that's true. No, I
Right.
think that's, yeah.
The other thing is, does that mean the Olympics? So now that's been postponed, are they giving people a second chance at making it?
That's a good
So,
That's a
so
really good
or
question.
whoever qualified for the Olympics this summer is in, and they're not allowing people to get another year
Mm.
to, um, qualify. The,
Right. And I guess all these, well, there are going to be a lot of questions that are still going to be happening as this whole, again, with this whole COVID-19, people are still wondering about it. A lot of crazy things are happening with it. But I guess in the long run, in terms of just giving a definite answer now, I would say, again, this is the best thing for all athletes, for the world. And it's the best thing to do, even if, let's say, the COVID, it slows down during that time. Better not take any chances with that.
I agree. All right, we're gonna step aside, come back talking about the NCAA when we return here on Beyond the Stat.
Back here on Beyond the Stats, I'm Tanner with Zachariah Begley himself. So, Zach, the NCAA is allowing athletes to have fundraisers to help with COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit more about some players that have been kind of particular standouts throughout this time?
Yeah, so this all started with Trevor Lawrence starting a GoFundMe to raise money for coronavirus relief. The NCAA originally shut it down. Then a couple days later, they're like, actually, you can do this, which it's probably due to backlash of some sort. Because, I mean, how do you tell a player who's trying to help people that they can't raise money to help people? It's not like they're raising money to give to themselves. NCAA rules, but they then made an exception for coronavirus relief, which is really good. Um, they did the right thing here. The NCAA, even though it took them backtracking to do the right thing, they did the right thing. And then a couple days later, Sam Ellinger announced that he is also going to be raising money. He got NCAA approval before he started it, but I think they'll approve everyone who does this. But so that's kind of the story here, Tanner.
And Zach, I think what's great about this is, I mean, in particular with Trevor Lawrence and Sam Ellinger, like those are big names. And of course, Trevor Lawrence coming off an amazing season with Clemson, only to fall in the championship game to LSU. But still, because it was him and his girlfriend, they both started this. I think it's important for players like that to raise awareness. We've seen this throughout this entire time with the COVID-19. NBA players donating a lot of money. We've seen football players do a lot. We've even seen hockey do a lot. So it's great that players like Trevor Lawrence, who still clarifies, so he's around our age doing this and wanting to raise awareness and raise money for this during this time, not just for, media, not for anything like that, because he genuinely cares. They genuinely care about this because it is a scary time and people are kind of in fear with what's going to happen with this. So I think it's great that people like Trevor Lawrence and Sam Ellinger are doing this to let people know we're going to do our best to try to slow this down.
Yeah, and I'm glad the NCAA is approving it. I think the NCAA made the right choice the second time around, in allowing this to happen and allowing it to be approved and allowing for players to raise money for something that's really affecting everyone. And to be quite honest, I think the NCAA should just allow players to raise money for things in general. So I'm not saying, yeah, like obviously if you're raising a GoFundMe to give yourself money, that's not okay. And
Agreed. No,
understandable, the
yeah.
NCAA can't do that. But I think they should allow players in general to raise money for things. If they want to start a charity, I mean, some of these players like Trevor Lawrence are known
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're stars. They're college stars, but they're still stars. And they have enough know-how to raise money for things that they find and deem important. And I think that's perfectly okay. There'll have to be
Yeah.
stipulations, obviously, but I think that the NCAA should allow for players to use their um, what is it? Reach, gravitas,
Yeah. I,
reach. I think is the best word to raise money for things.
And Zach, it's important for players, like Trevor Lawrence and Sam Ellinger, two top tier players. And of course, Trevor Lawrence, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in college football as of right now. It's important for them to use that. Maybe stardom is another good word for it, to use that presence that they have and be like, well, if Trevor Lawrence is doing this, maybe I want to donate or I want to do this, to spread that awareness. Like, guys, this is a big deal in this pandemic that we're currently in. So it's great that they're doing this. I hope more athletes help donate for this to go towards the research to try to slow this down. Hopefully it's starting to. A couple players are already starting to get completely healthy from if they were intentionally, clarified that they had it. But no, I hope that more college athletes keep doing this, and it'll be interesting to see what the NCAA does. However, this COVID-19 pandemic happens in the future. When we come back, we're going to talk about the AP National Players and Coaches of the Year. I'm Tanner Camp with Zach Begley, and you're listening to Beyond the Stats.
Zach Begley, Tanner Camp here on Beyond the Stats. We're looking at the AP Coaches and Players of the Year for both the college men and women's basketball seasons at the NCAA Division I level. Starting off with the women, Sabrina Ionescu and Dawn Staley named Coach and Player of the Year. Sabrina Ionescu, the Oregon Star, wins Player of the Year. And Dawn Staley takes Coach of the Year at the University of South Carolina. For the men, it's Anthony Grant and Obi Toppin, both from Dayton. Grant, the coach, Toppin, the player, for those of you that don't know. Tanner, break it down for us a little bit.
All right, so starting with the men's side, as you said, player of the year was Obi Toppin. The Dayton forward averaged 20 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, a little over 2 assists. He shot 63% from the field, 39 from three, and 70% from the free throw line. So obviously the standout himself. A lot of highlight plays that we saw from him. And then for Anthony Grant, again, the coach for Dayton in his 12th year coaching in the NCAA. It was his third with Dayton. The team went 29-2. They were the Atlantic 10 regular season champions. They were the only undefeated school in the Atlantic 10, the highest ranking. They were third, which is where they finished before everything was going on here. And then this is the best record in Grant's career. So Dayton, obviously a very impressive team throughout the entire regular season. Really wish we could have gotten to see them in the tournament. I feel like they would have made a really deep run because they were pretty good the last couple of years, making some pretty solid runs. But this year, I was really excited to see how they were. I mean, they were almost a top 10 team in the country in scoring. They averaged around 80 points per game, which put them at 12th. So Dayton in general this year, very deserving. They had the best player and the best coach in the country. So props to Dayton. Very unfortunate that this was the year that everything had to happen, but props to Dayton itself. And then for women's basketball, as you said, Sabrina Ionescu, player of the year. Zach, some very impressive numbers in her final season with the Ducks, 17.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, and 9 assists, all those per game. She shot almost 52% from the field, 39% from the three, and 92% from the free throw line. And it doesn't just stop there. She's the first player ever on the men's or women's side in NCAA Division I basketball history to have over 2,000 career points, over 1,000 career rebounds, and over 1,000 career assists. Only player to ever do that in a 4-year career. And she is the NCAA all-time leader in career triple-double. She finishes off her career with 26. Then for Coach of the Year, as you said, Dawn Staley, the coach from University of South Carolina in her 20th year coaching. This is her 12th with the Gamecocks, and they went 32-1 in the season, the best record in her career. And then they also went undefeated in the SEC. So very impressive numbers for both Ionescu and Staley, and just in general, great choices this year for players and coaches of the year.
Yeah, I think we have to give props to all 4 names on this list. Sabrina Ionescu is she's almost a legend. She is a legend in college basketball, almost a legend in basketball in general. Yeah, whatever she does after college, she's going to be very good at. I'm guessing she's going to go to the WNBA. But yeah, I mean, she's good. She is good
And
at
I think
basketball.
one thing that's just impressive with Ionescu, and I didn't mention this, is that not only did she play in every single game during her time at Oregon, she also started if she played in a game, she started in it, which is very clear of that throughout her career numbers. And then again, just going back to Obi, he's just an impressive player. We saw so many insane highlights, but just kind of the leadership that he brought to this Dayton team and really put them in the right direction to have the record that they did, because they beat some pretty solid teams as well. And that's all under the coaching leadership of Anthony Grant. I mean, he's obviously had a very good career with coaching and with Dayton in general, but obviously by far the best season. And again, just raises so many questions of what would have happened. Obviously, clearly would have made the end of the tournament in terms of what seeding. Most likely, they should be a number 1 seed.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Obi is he redshirted his first year, and so he was a redshirt sophomore this year, which you don't see a lot in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he had a year. He's going to the NBA. He's announced he's going to the NBA, and
Yep.
he's going to. I'd be shocked if he falls out of the top 10. He might not go in the top 5 because of players like LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards at Georgia, and a couple other players. The center at Memphis who didn't finish the year because he was ruled ineligible. I'm blanking on his name. Vernon Carey Jr. is another one at Duke. There's a lot of good talent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good talent at the top, but I think, and I don't know if he's quite there in terms of NBA prospects, but I think he's like in the second tier. So I think he goes in the 6 to 10 range in the NBA draft. And I think he just plays, he plays well. He plays, he played well this year. The thing is, he also shot 39% from three, shot like 64% from the field, averages 20 points a game, super athletic, can bounce out the gym. I don't see why he isn't. If he doesn't, he goes in the 5 to 6 to 7
Mhm.
range, and I think he carves himself out as a pretty decent player in the NBA.
And I think it also does depend on what team needs what, basically, in terms of position, kind of his style of play, where he'll fit best in. Like for Memphis, the Grizzlies last year when they needed a point guard after Mike Conley's departure to the Utah Jazz, Ja Morant was perfect. Personal opinion, Ja Morant's rookie of the year, but again, that's also a little bias towards that. But it does depend on team and what position they do need. So, and that also goes not just for Obi, that goes for Sabrina as well. For in terms of the WNBA, personal opinion, she's the number one overall pick, no matter what team. Whichever team gets that first pick was going to get Sabrina. But with everything, with the players and the coaches, props to them. It was a great NCAA season filled with lots of upsets, and that's what made this season great. That's why this tournament would have been fantastic to watch. But again, completely understand with this global pandemic. But props to them, props to all the players and the coaches, and we appreciate them for giving us a great season.
Yeah, we're gonna step aside and be back with the MLB and the MLBPA's agreement on how the rest of the season is gonna go when we come back. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back here on Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp alongside my partner, Zachariah Begley. So, Zach, the MLB and the MLBPA, they agreed on, stipulations for the return of the 2020 season, which was big for the MLB and potentially even for sports in general. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and what those stipulations could mean for the league?
Yeah, so the stipulations are that players will get 170 million. I'm not like each player gets 170 million. There's 170 million dollars being broken up between the players that will cover May and April as an advance. And if the season happens, they give the money goes back, and then they'll get their regular salaries. If the season doesn't happen, they get to keep that money. A couple other things that are happening: if the season doesn't happen, players will get the same service time, which matters for players who haven't become free agents yet, and so they get the same service time, which means that as they got in 2019. So that means if they don't play at all this season, which is a thing that is slightly a possibility. It's in the plans, um, which means say you played 50 games in 2019, you will have the 2020 season will read in your service time as that you played the same amount of games in 2020. But if they play, obviously you get the service time for the games you played. A couple of other things that are happening are the draft will be shortened to 5 rounds for 2020, and then they'll do 20 rounds in 2021.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then another thing that's happening is they are not allowing any moves by any players or by any teams, excuse me. No moves by any teams until they agree when the season starts. So once the season starts, they can start making moves again, but there is a transaction freeze at the moment.
And some of the other parts that they have are looking through with this, assuming that this all goes through, is that they have certain conditions that have to be followed. So one is that there is no ban on any big mass gatherings that would limit the ability to play in front of those fans, but that could also be very different in terms of use of neutral sites. One of the other conditions is that there can't be any travel restrictions throughout the U.S. or Canada. And then also, then this is probably the biggest one, is that the medical experts have to determine that there are no health risks for that. So very reasonable to have these conditions go through. They still want the best interest for the players, but there have been multiple people, players, other league officials that have said that by the end of the day, the players, they do want to play. And I think loads of other athletes in every sport around the world are saying the same thing. So the MLB kind of taking some steps to potentially get back to that. The NBA even touched a little bit that there's a chance for that. So I think this is a good step. for baseball to hopefully get back in the full swing, a very popular sport, and then maybe even show good signs and get those positive vibes that sports are going back in the right direction, that there is a chance for certain sports to resume their seasons and finish off. So I think this is great, not just for the MLB, but for all sports in general.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. So sort of the stipulations. I think that means. So no, there's going to be no moves for the next until the start of the season, which seems a little crazy because if baseball seems to be moving players every other week,
Hmm.
I mean, you see stars like Mookie Betts just get traded in baseball, and that doesn't
Out of the
happen in other
blue, out of
sports.
nowhere.
Slightly out of nowhere.
But it was it was a
For
surprise.
For Mookie Betts, it wasn't like they've been talking about moving him, but not. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but like players in baseball get moved all the time, even star players. Like baseball's okay with moving players a little bit more so than in football, especially. Big players don't really move for trades in football. Most of them get signed in free agency somewhere else. Especially quarterbacks. When's the last time Jay Cutler's the last quarterback I think that got traded? That was a starter. Um, yeah, and so baseball is okay with just moving players, unlike other sports. Um, yeah, and the shortening of the draft is huge. Baseball has a lot of rounds, but they
Hmm.
also have a lot of teams to fill, so it's understandable. So only having 5 rounds will mean a lot for minor league teams more than major league teams because that means they'll have to sign more free agents to fill rosters. So players that normally would have sat out if the season happens will be able to play. So that's good for some players, but there'll just be less. Yeah. And then they're increasing the rounds next year to kind of make up for it, which makes sense. Um, the those are the big ones. I mean, obviously, not saying we are not playing unless we can fill the stadiums is another huge one. That's probably the biggest one because that's going to make the season take longer to start. That's just the truth of it. It's going to make the season take longer to start because you are waiting for players to or for fans to be able to watch these games live.
Well, Zach, again, I think, even with all the stipulations, trying to keep the players safe but also try to bring those fans back. As you said, now that I think more about it, the fans are really important in this whole deal. Obviously the players' health and how they can play and they can find a way to make this work. But the fans are a big deal throughout this. But as a baseball fan myself, I really hope they can find a way to make this work. It would be great for everybody, but if they can find to make this work and hopefully get this season going back soon, it's going to be in the best interest for everybody.
Yeah, fans are the most important part of sports in a lot of ways. And I think it's really big for them to be able to go to games for players and for owners and for teams and for baseball in general. When we come back, we'll look at how MLB is teaming up with Fanatics to make medical gear for COVID-19 relief. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. Zachariah Begley's with me. I'm Tanner Camp. So Zach, Fanatics and the MLB have teamed up to kind of halt the production of the jerseys so that they can help manufacture protective masks and gowns. Great way, during this whole COVID-19 pandemic. What are your thoughts? What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so what my understanding is that MLB is combining with um, their jersey manufacturer for fans, Jerseys Fanatics. And instead of making jerseys during this time, they're going to make medical gowns and face masks and other medical equipment to just help with relief, to help hospitals that are having trouble maintaining these things because there's a lot of people going to hospitals right now because a lot of people are getting infected. I mean, the U.S. became number one for most confirmed cases on Thursday night. So clearly clearly hospitals need gear, and Fanatics and MLB are doing the right thing and teaming up to, come together and help out where they can.
No, absolutely. In fact, the company, they actually, from what I'm reading or have read earlier, they actually started manufacturing it with these masks and gowns this week, and their goal is to try to get 1 million masks and gowns for the next couple of months because, yeah, they don't want to take any chances. They don't know how long this is going to last. But again, this is just another way how amazing sports are and helping team up to help with situations like this. I think what the MLB is doing, halting jersey productions because as much as we love those baseball jerseys, as of right now, that's not that's not what's needed as of right now, at least, those masks and gowns. I think it's fantastic. I'm glad that the MLB has decided to agree with this to help part with Fanatics. So it's amazing to see. When I saw this, I remember you told me about the story, and it kind of made me. Then I read through it a little bit, and I was like, it's awesome to see this kind of thing happening during this time, and it just puts a smile on your face and makes you realize again we're all going in the right direction.
Yeah. During this time, we keep talking. Yeah, everyone keeps talking about unity, but unity is the right word. Um, yeah, we need all hands on deck to help the medical field. And the MLB Fanatics, kudos to them. They're doing the right thing. There's no way around it. Um, we had to talk about this. I wanted to throw in a feel good. We had to throw in this feel good story at the end. We're just being honest here, and like it's a feel good story in a sad way. It's a bittersweet feel good
Hmm.
story. I'll say that. But yeah, I we have to commend MLB and Fanatics teaming up and doing the right thing and not worrying about people buying baseball jerseys right now because like you said, that's not what we need. That's really all we have for you today. Check us out on social media at Beyond the Stats. Check us out where you listen to your podcasts and also on YouTube at Beyond the Stats.
Thank you so much again. This has been Beyond the Stats.